Hello and welcome to the Geekly. I'm Lex.
I'm Jules.
We've got a huge episode today. We're going to be doing our spoiler-free review of Joker. We've got American Horror Story, Titans, Batwoman, Supergirl, and The Flash. Well, before we dive in, I did 2 polls this week. The first one was, if you could go back in time to change one thing about your life, would you?
Yes.
65% of people said hell yeah. Like, only 11% said, are you crazy, which was my kind of, no answer. But in the comments, everybody who commented was like, no, everything that's happened in my life has brought me to be the person I am today, and, good for you guys.
What if you hate the person you are today? That's
then
the
you're
question.
fucked.
Yeah, that's the question I would pose back to them. What if you want to change the person you are today? So
screw the person I am today. Let's try to
I want to be the person I was yesterday.
Yeah.
That's what they're basically saying.
Essentially. The second one was, how do you feel about the Joker film, which is kind of a controversial, hugely divisive thing. Been reading reviews of the Joker all weekend and comments on Twitter and everything.
I cannot stop thinking about that film.
But yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, I mean, that is a defining attribute about this film. It makes you think about shit. 48% said that it was revolutionary, and only 11% said that it was problematic, which is slightly lower than the 15% who hated it, and the 26% who thought it was just okay. So apparently a lot of people are really responding to this film.
Did you vote in it?
Yeah, I did. I said it's problematic.
Yeah.
I think, for me personally, all of the good things about the film are kind of offset by the various problems it has in terms of portrayals and representation and things like that. So while I think, yeah, it's a beautiful film, it has some issues. I mean, I suppose that's a nice way to segue into our non-spoiler review of Joker, because we did our full spoiler review on Friday, and afterwards I was thinking, you know what, because this film it leaves you thinking. So I thought, okay, we've done our review. Maybe I gave it a short stick a little bit. So I looked more into Todd Phillips and decided, no, I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think he had any sort of higher agenda with this film. I think he was just kind of going for the exploitation aspect of it. And I think I'm going to stick by our non-spoiler review.
Yeah.
So, how did you feel about the film?
I've seen it twice now, and I really enjoy it. If I had to give a blunt answer, I'd say it's probably the film I've enjoyed most since The Dark Knight, in terms of DC films. Yeah, I think it's incredibly well acted across the board. I think the cinematography is amazing. I think the story, I can't talk about the bit that I would remove, but that's kind of the main bit I object to. It's difficult in a non-spoiler review.
It is a challenging film.
Yeah.
There are a lot of difficult things about it.
I think there are bits that will hopefully create conversations about if he could have been helped. This is happening in the world right now. People are being let down in the world right now. And this is set in the 80s, but much of the first 15 minutes in the film, those kind of issues are still happening today in terms of funding being removed from social services, mental health services. He's on 7 medications. And he says to the woman who says, we can't talk anymore. They don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about me. And he says to her, where am I going to get my medication? And the assumption is the rest of the film, he's not on this medication anymore. I hope it starts conversations, but films aren't released into a vacuum. You and I, we watch this film and we can see what needs to be seen. We can understand certain aspects. But there are people that will go into this film and they will misinterpret. They instead of seeing this as a kind of character study cautionary tale, they will see this as the rise of a hero, and that's. I hope I'm still. I think we're non-spoiler territory.
Yeah,
that's the issue. Not everyone who sees this film will see it the way you and I see it, and that's the issue. The debate about freedom of expression rumbles on. We can't just have stories about good people, but it's the way you tell a story about a bad person. And yeah, it's a film called The Joker, about the Joker. Everything in it was, in a sense, predictable. This is the story I think we wanted to see. Whether we needed to see it is
this
up
is
in the
not
air.
the story I wanted to see.
I'll pass over. I'll yield the floor.
Personally, we didn't really address this in our other review, but on reflection, I've realized that the depiction of mental health in this film really, really bugs me, particularly, and it kind of, My feelings towards that were sort of instigated because I saw a lot of reviews that were saying, oh, this is a great character study of, somebody battling with mental illness. It's a really good example of the problems that go along with mental illness. And yes, to a certain extent, it does touch on some problems, particularly with the system, as you said, in the first 15 minutes with funding and where he's going to get his medication, and a lot of the things he says, like he just doesn't want to feel bad anymore, and they're like not there to help him. And that is very, very true to life. That's the struggle I'm in right now. I'm going to doctors and saying, please do something, and they're like, what can we do? But the thing is, all right, you mentioned he was on 7 different types of medication, and then he went off his medication. One, that in itself is a really negative and dangerous trope to attach towards mental illness, particularly since we aren't told what mental illness he has. Mm-hmm. So it just sort of blanketly casts anybody who's on medication for any sort of mental health difficulty as a potential killer if they go off their medication, which is not true. I mean, there are some conditions that, yes, you have to be on medication, but there are other conditions where there are other things you can do with the diet, exercise, mindfulness, various other treatments, and you can be just fine off of medication. The other thing is that because they've not specified what his mental health issue is, it doesn't add up. If he went off the conditions that you could be medicated for, if you went off your medication, you would not kill the way the Joker kills. He's methodical, he makes plans, he takes joy in it. And, thinking specifically like schizophrenics and bipolar and PTSD, which are kind of the most likely to be violent conditions off their medication, the motivation for them comes from a place of fear and self-protection rather than a delight in wreaking havoc and causing mayhem. And I would probably say that Joker is more a psychopath than somebody who needs to be medicated, and you can't medicate for psychopathy. So yeah, I felt like his evolution and the psychology of the film just wasn't on point, and there's so much debate and controversy around mental health, and there's so many negative stigmas that aren't exactly true. I don't think we need another film perpetuating those stigmas. And I think, in general, this was a really irresponsible film for Todd Phillips to make. In somebody else's hands, it could have been a really powerful film. It could have been a really important film. But he didn't do the proper research. He didn't do the proper legwork getting the film to be at that stage. This is just kind of, I would classify it almost as violence porn. A little bit. Very beautiful, aesthetic, artistic violence porn, but that's kind of the level that it's at.
Yeah, I would disagree roundly with that. Anything you liked about the film?
Joaquin Phoenix was amazing. I don't feel like this was a film about Joker. I feel like this was either a film about a guy that inspired Batman's Joker later down the road, or a film about a guy who was inspired by the character of Joker, not that he embodied Joker himself. There were a lot of Batman elements that were very, very shoehorned in, kind of just to like bash us over the head with like, hey, this is Gotham, this is the Joker, this is a comic book movie, when nothing else about it said comic book movie. It is a film that makes you think. It's not a film that you can just go in and like mindlessly watch and leave the theater and be like, oh yeah, blah, blah. Yeah. I mean, we saw it Friday, and I'm still thinking about it, and I'm still kind of unsure how I feel about it. I mean, a lot of other people have come out with very definitive opinions on the film, and I'm still kind of like, it's got its good points, it's got its bad points. I'm not interested in a sequel to this film. I
was going to ask you about that, actually, because I've got 2 concepts for a sequel I'd like to throw your way.
All right.
The first is a spiritual sequel where it's like a Lex Luthor or it's somebody else, but it's within this kind of DC Black Label universe. Maybe not necessarily Todd Phillips, but a second film of this kind of style and this kind of, Oscar fare, I guess, as this film is.
So something that could be taken more seriously than the usual comic book films. Yeah. And we're not dissing comic book films because they are.
Oh, I mean, we love them.
We love them, but the Academy does not tend to take them very seriously, despite the fact that they're quite dramatic and complex.
Is that the kind of thing you'd be interested in?
I would be curious. I think if Todd Phillips was doing it, I would be less curious. I'm not overly impressed with him as a person. I mean, he famously said that like comedy was dead, and that's why he's doing serious films now.
Oh God, what a thing to say! Comedy is having like the best period of the last 20 years, like this year alone. I
think like the people who say comedy is dead because you might offend somebody
are the offensive people.
They're the offensive people. Like if you can't make a joke without offending somebody, then the problem is with you. It's not with everybody else.
Because I kind of want this film to maybe start a debate about more R-rated films, more adult comic book type films. This is as a universe to maybe branch off from, rather than everything needing to be Disney PG-13.
Yeah.
That would be my hope, that something positive that could come out of this film would be that. My second idea, this might intrigue you. This second idea for like a sequel might intrigue you. Joaquin Phoenix again, Todd Phillips again, but it's a completely different Joker origin, going along with the idea that his origin story is multiple choice. Heath Ledger talked about being an army veteran or something. So it's the same people, the same team, but it's another one. And maybe a third one. So like it's a trilogy of all different origin stories for the Joker. Not that this will ever happen, not in a million years, but I mean, what would you
I would be, like, if it was part of something like that, I think I would be more open to it. Again, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Todd Phillips. If you're kind of a despicable person, that kills it for me. I think that would be an interesting way to look at the Joker, to do his multiple choice purposefully confuse, because I think that's one of the most attractive elements of Joker is we can't pin him down. We don't know exactly who he is. He is the trickster gone way bad. I mean, that is one of the things that bothered me about the story. It was like the definitive, this is the Joker's origin story, and we got a lot of detail about him and his life and his history. I mean, there were some interesting twists into it that I would like to see in, like future Batman things with Joker, but if there was a trilogy of Joker origin stories, I would watch it.
I thought you might be. I thought that one might tantalise you. So this season of American Horror Story, I'm kind of getting the vibe of it being Saw crossed with And Then There Were None, the Agatha Christie story. We get nobody's background immediately, but as it progresses, we get everybody's background, and we find out that they're all terrible people, and they've all almost been brought here together for a reason, and they're being like picked off one by one. Because we had some interesting twists this week. In week one, I said, Ray's got to die, Chet's got to die. Almost had like my 2-in-1 scenario. We found out that Ray is, the assumption was he was like maybe the one good one, the kind of bit slightly boring, bland one, but
he's such a coward.
Oh.
The worst kind of coward, and like there's not even any sort of self-reflection about it. He just keeps leaving people behind. It's just like, you know what, guys, screw you, I'm out.
Ricky Ramirez was coming through the door, and he's like, guys, it's Darwin, survival of the fittest, and then he's about to be killed, and Chet saves him, and down the pit, Chet's like impaled on these spikes, and Ray's like, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm not dying down here with you. What an absolute piece of trash. I'm glad he is dead.
Yeah, he deserved that.
We found out that Nurse Rita isn't Nurse Rita. She's somebody called, I think, Miss Chambers, and she's doing a PhD. Nobody has ever been able to talk to Jingles. She waltzes in there, turns off the tape, and suddenly he's a chatty Cathy pouring out everything to this woman. It was kind of like the conversation with Margaret and Ramirez from the last episode. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really see that coming because the character's quite boring, and I wasn't imagining anything greater for her than being the camp nurse.
I found the twist interesting. It definitely made the character more interesting because, like you, I thought she was a fairly boring character.
Yeah.
I figured she was mainly just there for body count.
I was about
purposes.
to say cannon fodder.
So yeah, having this twist, and it's because I didn't expect it in any way, shape, or form from this character, it kind of casts things in a new light, and it does sort of open up the possibility of like have all of these people been brought here for a particular reason? Like, it seemed like it was chance that they all got jobs as counselors, but was it really chance?
Maybe. It feels like there's a larger game being played by someone we're not sure who yet. Probably Margaret. I missed her in this episode.
I did, too. I was really looking forward to seeing her in this episode.
What about the second twist? Montana talking to
Montana
Ricky?
and Ramirez.
Something like, why isn't she dead yet?
I saw that one coming.
The assumption I would have is that, I didn't see it coming, but since thinking about it, the assumption is that she's either the girlfriend of the best man or she's like the sister of the fiancé, but you'd think in either scenario she would have met Montana before.
I'm intrigued to see like what Montana has against Brooke. And like when I say I saw it coming, it was basically, I saw the instant the two of them were facing off, I just thought, oh, there's going to be a twist here. So it wasn't like I was like sitting there for episodes thinking like Montana is hooking up with Ricky Ramirez. No, it was just like as soon as that scene started, I was like, oh, this is the way they're going to go with that.
Yeah, so like everybody's got an ulterior motive for being at this camp, and I do wonder whether we're still going to get, because so far it's been quite derivative of other, not necessarily other horror, but of itself. I mean, we've had the copycat killers in this episode, kind of like the bloody face copycat killers. I do wonder whether they're going to copy some Roanoke stuff, and we're going to have that rug pull as well. It's kind of all over the place. I'm not enjoying it as much as I would hope to, but the intrigue, I'm kind of at 11 out of 10, you know, because I haven't figured the puzzle out yet, I think. That's why I'm still curious to watch more, but something feels different to most seasons. The tension feels a lot less. It feels a bit flatter than most seasons. I think you'd describe it as something to like veg out to, something to have on in the background while you're doing something else. That's probably the level I'm at with it at the moment. And I was hoping after Apocalypse to have an Asylum level grabbing me, actually scaring me, because is this horror?
I've always found slasher fics to not really be horror. It depends on how they're contextualized, because for me, horror always has to have a supernatural element to it. Otherwise, it's a thriller. And there's nothing wrong with thrillers, but we have yet to really see any sort of supernatural thing. So I would kind of classify this more as a thriller than as actual horror.
Yeah, I would as well. A few jump scares. People are dying. There's just something...
Yeah,
element H for horror is just missing from this at the moment. So it's quite a juvenile camp story where people are being picked off in fairly tame ways.
That's fun for what it is, but I think like you, I was really hoping for, and like given the trailers for this season, I was really, really excited about it, and I had really high expectations, and I was hoping for another, you know, as you said, Asylum level season, where at the end of every episode I'm like, where's the next one? Where's the next one? And I'm not really, I mean, I'm intrigued, and I want to see what happens, but I'm not kind of chomping at the bit to see the next episode. I am really enjoying this season of Titans.
Can I start by saying I think there's absolutely a place for this level of violence and this tone in the comic book TV landscape. They have a real villain. They're up against somebody deserving of that level of fear.
Yeah, I mean, I think the portrayal of Slade Wilson is just awesome, and I think it's accentuated by the fact that he doesn't say very much. He's present, but he's very non-verbal. You're just kind of always waiting for him to kill somebody.
I thought his interchanges with Dr. Light were always so funny, because Dr. Light's so kind of chatty and so banterous, and he'd give these monotone answers back. Yeah. I always loved their exchanges. We're not going to have any more of those exchanges because Jason Todd almost escaped. I think he either choked him out or broke his neck, but I think he's dead now. Have we just seen a death in the family?
Apparently Superboy is supposed to come into the next episode, so I'm wondering if Superboy appears to save Jason Todd.
That is a great fucking shout. That is superb. I thought they were going to do a fake out, because I think season 2 is a little bit too early for him to die. It could happen, but I think you may have just absolutely pulled a blinder out of nowhere. Superboy swooping in to pick up Jason Todd would be a great way to introduce the character.
Like you, well, one, I'm really enjoying Jason Todd.
Same.
In this version of Titans. I would have issues if Slade Wilson killed him instead of Joker. I feel that's such an integral part of the Bat family story that Joker kills Jason Todd, that to assign it to somebody else. And I mean, Deathstroke is... I can always confuse him and Deadshot.
Me too. I knew you were going to say that.
Deathstroke in this show is a great villain. He's a perfect villain for the Titans to go up against, but he's not the same level as Joker.
He's a firm B, I would say.
Yeah,
Joker is A+. Yeah, all the way.
Or like off the chart.
Yeah, like Stephen S. Pumpkins, he's his own thing.
You know, while I feel like a lot of comic book lore can be up for grabs and different adaptations and stories can be changed and adjusted and made malleable, I think the point of Joker killing Jason and the effect that has on Bruce and the rest of the Bat family is too significant to assign to kind of a B-list villain. So I'm really hoping that Superboy saves him, or there's some sort of fake out or something and Jason isn't dead, because one, I want to see more of him, and two, I'm just going to be really pissed off if they change that aspect of the story.
Do we want to speculate what happened to Jericho? Because we've just found out about Garth being killed by Deathstroke. Are the Titans as culpable for this whole shit show as Slade Wilson? I'm super intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great twist, and it would kind of underscore the tension and conflict with the Titans 1.0 team. You know, because like Dawn and Hank and a few of the others have kind of been to Dick, like, why are you starting this again? Like, what are you doing? And, you know, yeah, they could be like that because of the death of Garth, but I think if they're implicated in the death of Jericho and, like, they really seriously fucked up, that would just underscore the line of, like, Dick is doing something really kind of off the wall and illogical.
He might consider Rose some kind of redemption story.
Yeah.
I almost hope that they have caused the death of Jericho. And I want Slade Wilson to be just the red mist to descend, and him to really, there's too many times in the Arrowverse, they'll go up against the villain will get away. Like, nobody will bear any scars. It will just happen. I really want the team to be up against it in this season. I want them to be mentally and physically destroyed at the end of this. If they manage to kill Deathstroke, I want it to be torturous, because the violence and the tone of this show are bang on.
Titans is an example of excessive violence for a purpose. We kind of talked about the glorification of violence in Joker, whereas in Titans, the characters are constantly evaluating their relationship with violence, and is it necessary? Is it the right thing to do? Dick is really struggling with not turning into another Batman solving all the problems with his fists. So there is this sort of idea that we're seeing a different side of kind of our superheroes. We usually get the kind of celebrated savior of the world version, and in this we're getting kind of the darker side and the consequences of the superhero life, and I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. I think it's being done really well. Kind of like it was in The Boys, except you still want to root for the Titans, which is odd. As much as they screw up and as dysfunctional as they are, you still kind of want them to succeed, which may be because we know who they are. It's Robin and Nightwing and Starfire.
I feel compelled by all of these characters, with the exception of Gar. I do want them to succeed, and I am rooting for them. Still got some concerns about cast size, because as people are adding to this team, there are a lot of people. I almost wish Titans 1.0 were specifically in flashbacks. Titans 2.0 were like specifically in modern day, present day, with the exception Donna Troy can like bounce across. But I'm at the point where that's the only concern I have for this show.
I think what they're doing is they're focusing on 1.0, because the fact is, if Rachel went up against Slade Wilson, it would be no contest.
Yeah.
Again, we have that overpowered person who's being kept off the board because she would end the conflict in a second. And they're introducing difficulties with her powers and her ability to control her powers, which is also kind of relegating her to the sidelines. Gar, I think, is always going to be a sideline character. All he can really do is become a fucking tiger.
Why couldn't he have fallen off the roof? That's what I want to know.
Because no one would care.
Happy with Titans.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more. I'm really, really enjoying this season.
I think it's a good thing that the DCU, if it still even exists at this point, this is good. This is strong. They needed a kind of real strong season. Batwoman or Supergirl? Let's start with Batwoman. What were your thoughts on Batwoman?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kind of atmosphere, the theme. I think Ruby Rose did an excellent job. I liked the kind of her narrating and then finding out that it was to Bruce. I was really disappointed by the suit. The moment they revealed her, and I was just like, really? That's it? That's your fucking Batsuit? Like, come on. Because, like, all of the teaser pictures of her, she's been in a really sort of cool suit.
I'm assuming that's episode 2. I'm assuming she has to have this kind of montage where somebody's like, she needs... Who makes the suits in... Brainy makes Supergirl's suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, she needs her version of Brainy to create this suit.
She sort of got that in Luke Fox, which is... I'm guessing a descendant of Lucius Fox.
I would also assume that. He seems like a fairly standard Cisco Ramon, without the comedy, charm, intelligence. So we'll see how he plays out.
With the healthy fear of Batman, though.
Yeah.
As you would.
As you should, yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty good first outing. Like, it was a good introduction to the character. We got to see kind of a lot of the city. I think I might have liked a little bit more on the relationship between Kate and Bruce. She obviously looked up to him quite a bit as a child, and she mentioned that he was the only one that was there for her after her sister and mother died, which I'm presuming had a lot to do with his own guilt about not actually saving them, which I find interesting as well. The bit where, Luke is kind of like, he never let that night go and he was always researched, I thought that was a bit overdone. I think it probably would have been better or more true to the character of Batman that, he fucked up in this situation and people died, but he just sort of moved on from it, not that he'd been obsessing about it for like over a decade. Surely he's made mistakes before and innocent people have died. Yeah, that was kind of the only part I felt was a bit out of keeping with the overall tone of the show.
I think I was mostly disappointed with it. I've got incredibly high hopes for this show. I found that little to no intrigue. It was like the entirety of Batman Begins, like one episode of TV, which I was slightly bothered by. I thought the pacing was incredibly quick throughout the whole thing. I know they have a lot to get through in pilot episodes, but I found that a little bit disorientating. The fact that Alice is her sister, I mean, yeah, it's fairly predictable. I think this show is going to be incredibly strong, but there was next to nothing about this pilot that filled me with that kind of confidence. I think it can occasionally happen in pilots. They can be a little bit hit and miss, but she was great. The city and the TV show look and sound great. Mixed feelings about the rest of the cast. I thought she'd either be like a total loner doing the Bruce Wayne thing, there wouldn't be much of a cast, or it'd be like a Trinity like Arrow, but she seems to be very popular. She seems to know a lot of people, and they were all fairly boring, NPC computer game characters that were interchangeable. An okay first step, but I'm hoping for far more, and I think there will be far more.
See, I would say that about Supergirl.
Talk to me about Supergirl.
The entire staff couldn't be locked into a 3-year contract without their knowledge or consent.
You are absolutely correct, sir. Absolutely correct. Can I just say, I'll let you carry on, but the entirety of Catco being bought by somebody feels like it's been done before, and it's a horrible,
it's been
horrible
done several times
storyline.
before.
Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible way to kick this season off from the beginning. Hate it.
I like Supergirl's new suit, but the reveal of her new suit took fucking ages. We've seen Iron Man's suit form around him, and it's super quick. He's in motion, and this felt like she was just sort of standing there. It was more like a Cinderella moment than a superhero moment.
That is superb. That is absolutely spot on.
Just overall, it wasn't a very exciting start. I mean, it was mostly centered around the conflict between Lena and Supergirl being angsty about revealing her identity to Lena. I'm annoyed that they're making Lena a villain. I think, in the seasons up until now, Lena has put an awful lot of work into not being your typical Luthor, and then just sort of all of a sudden, because she found out that Kara is Supergirl, she's heading straight down that road with no qualms about it. She didn't react the same way when she found out that James was Guardian. She was a lot more kind of understanding and accepting of that. So I'm kind of confused about why she has so much animosity about Kara keeping this secret from her, particularly since Kara did eventually tell her. I did enjoy that scene between the two of them with Kara revealing her identity and explaining why she did it, and they kind of had a little bit of a moment, and Lena sort of standing there sort of shocked, but then all of that was undermined by the kind of final scene where Lena's like, she betrayed me and I'm gonna fuck her up.
It should have been last season, that reveal. We can both agree on that. But I mean, just thank God it was episode 1 of season 5, because obviously Lex told Lena last season that Kara is Supergirl, but if we'd had another full season of Kara juggling with this inner turmoil of do I tell her, do I not tell her, it's been done so much. It's out now. Finally, we can move on, whichever way we go. And it is a shame Lena's being turned into a villain, because I think her name's Katie McGrath. She's the best of this whole show. Lena is one of the most compelling characters in the entirety of the Arrowverse. She could make a great villain, but I don't want her to be a villain. I liked her going up against Lex last season. I thought that was really strong. I guess you can't escape your destiny, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose not. She will be like a Lex Luthor level villain, but I was really enjoying her as kind of a protagonist, and I always looked forward to scenes with her. Partly it was because you never really knew which direction Lena was going to go in, and sometimes she even seemed like she was going bad, and then she would course correct and change her mind and kind of redeem herself a little bit, and I found that really interesting, because similar to Dick Grayson's struggle with violence and how to handle conflict, you saw this kind of constant struggle in Lena, and I found that very interesting, whereas now it seems like she's just sort of wholeheartedly given in to her family legacy.
Somebody buying Catco hates it, as I've said. Why would she make herself editor-in-chief? I assume she has no previous as an editor. She obviously
beyond
wants
the fact that she runs this massive tech company, when is she going to have time to be editor-in-chief?
Yeah, it bothers me that she wants to turn it into BuzzFeed as well. I'm hoping it's going to be a short-lived story, and it's just a way to free up James and free up Kara. They'll probably both quit, and they'll lean a little bit more into the superhero personas. That's what I'm hoping. I do like the new costume. I don't like it coming out of the glasses.
I thought that was really kind of dumb as well.
Yeah.
Like I expected him to like attach the thing to her temple or something,
Yeah.
where it was sort of like a cognitive control device thingy, or like, you know, something she just touched and the suit came out.
Yeah.
The number of times that I take my glasses off for various reasons, you know, to clean them, there's something on them, they're like sitting funny, whatever. And I just imagine, you know, like
Her in the middle of Belly Burger. What's it? Is
Big
it called?
Belly Burger.
Big Belly Burger, yeah.
Yeah, taking her glasses off to like wipe a smear and there's the suit comes out and like her identity's revealed. Yeah, that seemed like a not very well thought out aspect.
Obviously, Supergirl exists in the comics. Batwoman exists in the comics. Should they rebrand Supergirl Superwoman?
It's an interesting question. I would say yes.
I would say yes.
Because, and I mean, I've thought this about the show kind of from the very beginning, because you have Superman and Supergirl, but they're basically contemporaries. Technically, Kara is actually older than Superman, but she's still called Supergirl. To me, Supergirl, much like the Superboy or Aqualad or whatever, it indicates a younger person. In the Bat family, we have Batwoman and Batgirl, so yeah, she should be Superwoman.
I think she should be branded as Superwoman. I have no idea if a Superwoman kind of canonically exists in the comics.
I don't think there is one.
I still don't really see why you wouldn't, other than the gatekeepers and the trolls and the fanboys saying, "Oh,
how dare you call her Superwoman? She's Supergirl.
She wears trousers now. How dare you?" That kind of stuff. But I would rebrand her like fairly quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought the Supergirl episode was boring, but the Flash kind of topped it. Like, the past few seasons, they've gone down a very angsty road, and it doesn't really fit very well.
Yeah. I enjoyed the first 3 seasons of The Flash very much, actually, but I remember at the end thinking, yeah, 3 speedsters, let's change it up. And then we had The Thinker, which was a terrible season. We've had Cicada, which was a terrible season, for 2 very different reasons. I just find The Flash incredibly boring. It's people sitting in rooms talking about their problems, very angsty, like you said. Cisco's probably the only character I'm vaguely interested in. Too many characters. Are we going to have another Killer Frost-centric mini-arc this whole season? That bothers me. I just don't enjoy it. Don't enjoy The Flash. It's episodes like this that make me think, why am I bothering with this TV show? Because it's been that painful the last 2 seasons.
For me, given the last 2 seasons, the only reason I watch The Flash now is for the crossovers. And even that, watching this episode, I was thinking, you know, you could probably understand the crossovers just watching all of the other shows and not watching Flash. Like, they're not doing anything new. They just keep going over the same ground over and over and over again. And it's boring. And even the kind of big reveal at the end of this episode wasn't really a big reveal, because Grant Gustin already told us that Flash was going to have to die in Crisis on Infinite Earths like months ago. So having the mysterious monitor guy show up and be like, the Flash must die, it was like, well, no fucking shit, you told us that already. I mean, we talked about like how both Batwoman and Supergirl were kind of underwhelming episodes to start this season off, but they both kind of showed potential and promise. I don't see any of that potential and promise here in Flash. I just see them doing more of the same that they have been for the past 2 years, and it really makes me wonder what's going to happen to the Arrowverse once Arrow isn't around. I mean, Arrow has kind of been the unifying show of the Arrowverse, obviously, given the name. Like, I don't really feel like any of the other shows are strong enough to take Arrow's place at this point in time. Flash is kind of the natural successor because it was the number 2 show, but there's no way that Flash could fill the gap that's going to be left by Arrow.
Okay, so I think that's the end of this week's podcast. Thank you for tuning in.
You can find us on patreon.com/geeknerdpod, facebook.com/the Geekly. We're also on Twitter @geeknerdpod, and our website geeknerdpod.com. See you next week.
See you next week.